Thanks for joining us for the Member xCite presentation. The Member xCite presentation is informative, interesting to the audience, and showcases the strengths of the presenter as an entrepreneur and their area of expertise. It's not a sales pitch, it's a 10-minute educational and insightful exploration into what they do. And of course, it's exciting.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our xCite presenter today, Prati Bhatt from Euphoria, to present to us on Can Your Favourite Cup of Tea Make You Fall in Love? Tea is almost an emotion as opposed to a product. One of Prati's brand messages is to recreate memories and those emotions in people's mind via their taste buds. She fell in love with the taste of good quality tea back in her late teens as she shared those cups with people she loved, and she never got addicted to it. The rest of Prati's journey was spent pretty much recreating those flavor palettes and more via Euphoria. Today's presentation is about how a great cup of tea shared with people can make you fall in love. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Prati Bhatt.
Those who don't know yet, I am Prati, founder at Euphoria and a tea taster. Euphoria is a brand I created to give people the most extraordinary tea tasting experience in the world. I have spent about last 3 years in creating some of the best seller tea blends, worked closely with a lot of tea farms across India, and make sure that what you get is not just an extraordinary taste, but also a great quality tea, something you can trust and enjoy every day. I am a trained tea taster and trained by one of the best tea masters in the world. So it's very privileged, and the tea master who has given expertise of his life for 45 years in companies like Unilever. Now, instead of talking about Euphoria, which can get boring, and my brand, I would jump into the tea side of the story. What happens behind the scenes, and why you trust a company that can bring you the best quality tea. A great tea tasting experience is based on 3 strong pillars, and they are emotions, memories, which is your psychological effect. Number 2 is the umami experience, or the flavor, or the taste you call it. And 3 is fragrance, or how you enjoy the nose of the tea before you sip into it. I will just touch base quickly on the emotion side of it. If you are an old-time tea drinker and you are connected with memories of tea, think of the first time you ever had the first cup of tea. You shared with your friends or family or someone you really loved. The memory follows by the palate. Fragrance is now supported with a strong emotion that gets embedded in your mind. A strong psychology backed with the warm beverage full of tannins and fragrance is a perfect combination to fall in love. And hence I said in the beginning of the presentation, can you really fall in love? Well, it's a perfect chemical combination to fall in love if you have all of that together in your hand. At Euphoria, a perfect example of such tea is English breakfast. English breakfast is such a versatile tea, classic flavors with this robust bittersweet notes. One of the most difficult teas to create and blend to perfection in the back end. It took me over 200 cups at one point, and combining over 4 different harvests and 3 tea gardens to create one tea-worthy or one selling-worthy, experience-worthy English breakfast for my customers. And that's the kind of pressure I have usually when I'm brewing teas for my customers. We would go to number 2. It is very easy to displease someone, as opposed to please someone when it comes to flavor palettes, because people have their set mindset and goals in what they want to really experience once they sip into it. It's very hard to have people drink a beverage specifically, that to a warm beverage, again, it's all science, to have a very open mindset. So it's quite a challenge for tea makers to actually achieve that kind of expectations from our customers. When it comes to flavors, there's tons of process that goes into tea making. And let me give you a classic example of a perfect chai. A chai is never just a combination of few spices in some black tea. In fact, the zest of a good flavor of a chai lies in the type of black tea used to create the chai. When I first came to Australia about 12 years ago, it took me 6 years to be just 50% impressed by chai. That is because of the absence of the black tea that I was looking for in the market. What matters is the soil, climate, rain, and harvest of the tea harvest. An organic Assam tea estate to actually procure robust flavor with the mineral retention and high tannin levels of the tea bush. Once it is harvested, it is taken to sorting machine. The leaf is then dried to perfection, making sure that it retains all the antioxidants and also the essential oils. It is then sent out to me, a tea blender, and my job is to grade it for you, sort it for you, and then taste it until I reach perfection and create variation and write notes. I then add selecting spices to it, making sure that no two spices are contradicting to each other or bruise each other or even bruise the palate of the tea that I've just created after all that long effort that I just put in. It is then brewed to perfection to give an umami flavor that satisfies all the senses. So that's how a good chai is created. And lastly, we'll touch base on the fragrance side of the story. A fragrance of a tea is so important to say that we reject a beverage or a food based on the way it smells 80% of the time. The fragrance decide all the 80% of the flavors that I just said, whether it is sweet, complex, it's going to be nutty, salty, or how it's going to really dance on your palate. For me, when it comes to tea, we do most judgment of the quality by its fragrance. The first thing we do when we open a box of tea for any customer is to smell and stop and imagine what the flavors are going to be like. If you don't get what you're looking for, you feel pretty disappointed just by smelling the box of tea that you have just received. Let me give you an example again. My jasmine green tea is the most fragrant tea of all. Perfumes soak up your senses in your room. At Euphoria, I do not use any artificial perfumes. Like over 88%, as per the research says, the jasmine tea out there are artificially perfumed. Instead, I use fresh jasmine flowers organically from the farms, dried to perfection. Again, not making sure it doesn't lose its essential oils. And then blending it to a certain grade of green tea for retaining the bouquet of fragrance. I then back it with mild but very earthy fragrant green tea, providing a garden of the bouquet to the jasmine flowers. This adds value and adds another note of the fragrance to the tea, naturally without perfuming it. So you can enjoy the classic flavor of jasmine green tea. Now, I'm going to wrap it up really quickly and keep it short. To sum it up, I would like to say it is essential to know your teas, where it's coming from in today's world. Buying from a wholesaler and creating small retail packs doesn't make it a tea company, and it doesn't assure you the quality, taste, and health benefits that you're going to get out of it. In the end, if I have a minute, I'm not sure, I would like 3 people to raise their hands. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. The 3 people to raise their hands and share one experience based on the memory as our first point, that the tea experience is created by the memory as opposed to anything else. A memory that you really cherish over a cup of tea, whether you shared it with your friends, family, or a story that you can't forget.
Fantastic. Anybody's got some great stories to share? There's got to be some tea drinkers out there.
I have. My internet's a bit dodgy. My dad, whenever we have a cup of tea, we always have to have a tablecloth on the table, and we always have to have a cup and saucer. So that's how we sit down and have a cup of tea with my dad. So I associate tea, and we always drank tea as a family, all sitting around the dinner table. So having a cup of tea to me is like bringing people together, and I love that.
Oh, that's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Lauren.
How that happens, like I remember when I drink tea, I remember being at my nan's house, and my family's like anti-sugar, but my grandmother was like, she could have been a sugar merchant. So we're allowed to get a teaspoon of sugar, white sugar, by the way, dip it in the tea and spoon feed ourselves with sugar. So my nan, thank God I don't have diabetes because I can't believe. Anyway, but that's the memories I have of my nan when I drink tea. I still talk about that all the time with my kids. They laugh. Anyway.
How fantastic. I think
Awesome.
Ellen wanted to share a story.
Yeah, I've got a story from my dad retired. I was born fairly late in life for my parents, and my dad retired, and because he retired because of age, and he went through a period of time where he would constantly make us tea all day. We'd end up with like 6 or 7 cups of tea because he was bored, he had nothing to do, and he would just go and make a cup of tea. So, yeah, a cup of tea kind of reminds me a little bit of my dad.
Oh, that's awesome, Ellen. Anyone else?
Carmel.
Probably a similar memory to Matt. In my grandmother, my nana, she had an old-fashioned stove where you would put wood and light a fire, so it would be a light all day. And she had this silver teapot, which was always on the stove from morning till night of tea. And everything would happen around the kitchen table. It was lovely. And she used to bake as well, so she made the most delicious apple pies with tea. It was just divine. Yeah.
All this talk is
Pie
making
with
me
tea. Now, how to recreate that? Thank you, Carmel. I'm going to recreate that somehow and do something with it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great.
Isn't it amazing?
Great.
Like all the memories of tea. Like I love my coffee, but it's interesting how tea brings those memories up more than something like coffee.
Yeah.
Interesting. Nice
I think
little
it's
end to your
because,
presentation there.
I think it's because tea is more of a ritual than coffee. Coffee is like something you just do on the run, whereas tea is there's a whole ritual around it. So it brings everybody together, brings these stories to
Does.
the front of mind. I think that's something about that.
So true. And I'd like to say that I've had Prati's tea before. So Prati sent me a pack of a whole bunch of different types. And I love licorice tea. It's really good for your voice if you do a lot of talking, which I tend to do. And the licorice tea, and I just buy it through T2 normally, and which is lovely, but the quality difference from Prati was like, wow, you could just, like, I was amazed about the difference. I wouldn't have thought there would have been that big a gap, but it really was. So very impressed.